All right, guys, let's get into it. Let's start talking about the second round of the NBA. What do I think is going to happen? And let's just break down some of these matchups and get into it. All right, let's start with the Eastern Conference because those playoffs are actually set. First, the Cavaliers versus the Pacers. This should be a pretty interesting series. When I think about this series off the top of my head, I honestly am thinking 7. I'm thinking 7. I'm thinking Cavs, obviously. I am thinking Cavs. I don't know. I'm thinking 7 or 6, but I guess I'll figure it out as I talk this out. But overall, I think this is going to be a very exciting matchup. Two teams kind of in that Midwest area. Not that there's a ton of tension with them, but still, they're semi-close to each other. And I just think this series is going to be pure scoring. It's just going to be scoring. I mean, the Cavs have been one of, if not the best offense in the entire NBA all year. We saw what they did to Miami. They literally beat them so bad that it was, I think, one of the most lopsided series of all time. So we know what the Cavs do. They have a ton of firepower. Obviously, you're led by Garland, Mitchell, and then you have the two big men, Mobley and Allen, and then you have all of the other guys as well for that team. That team is established. I also love what their coach is doing. His first year on the job, but he's obviously been, again, elevating that team. So I think Cleveland has a lot of firepower. Also, it can't be understated, they have home court. Home court is always huge, so that's something that they can rely on as well if things do get tough. But when you look at the other side, you have the Indiana Pacers, a team, again, that has a ton of firepower, a ton of scoring. Not really the best defensively, and I wouldn't say Cleveland is an elite defensive team, but they're not terrible. But I would definitely say they're better than the Pacers. The Pacers, when you look at their team again, it's just a ton of firepower. It's Haliburton, a guy that's going to be scoring. We saw what he could do, especially in that Game 5 against Milwaukee where he finished it. You have shooters around him. You have Miles Turner down low. I love McConnell. That's my guy off the bench. You have guys for the Pacers. You have guys, and again, you have a lot of options. That's what I think is so interesting about this series is there's so many options for both teams. There's so many guys that you can go to, so many guys that potentially can hit that shot that don't need to just be Mitchell or Garland or Haliburton hitting those shots. Like there are other options. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. I'm curious to see how the big men do against Miles Turner. Can they neutralize him? Is that going to be a big factor? I think that's something to watch in the series. So I just think it's going to be very high scoring. I think it's going to be a lot of scoring. Not saying defense won't get played because, again, if you've been following the NBA at this point, we know how the refs are officiating these games. They're pretty physical. There's not as many foul calls, but still, I think it's going to be a lot of scoring. But my gut off the top of my head is go with Cleveland. I'm going to go with the Cavs in 7. Feels like I should go with 6, but I'm going to go 7 because I do respect the Pacers. I think it's going to be a ton of scoring. It should be very interesting. I want to see how these matchups go with the guards guarding each other, and can those two big men for the Cavs, can they neutralize Miles Turner? Can they stop him? Because that's a big part of that offense and just how that team works for the Pacers. So very curious to see how this all plays out. This next matchup I'm very excited for. On paper, it probably won't be the best series, but it's more from a pure lore standpoint. Boston versus the New York Knicks. It's New York versus Boston. We obviously know there's a ton of beef there already from other sports with like the Patriots and the Giants. You have the Jets and the Patriots, and that's just off the top of my head. You got Red Sox, Yankees. There's a lot of lore with these cities. We haven't really seen the Knicks and the Celtics play in the playoffs. I don't even know the last time they even did. I should have looked it up probably, but this doesn't really happen. So I'm just kind of trying to appreciate the moment. But when we get to a basketball standpoint, I do think this is going to be Celtics in... I'm going to be generous and I'll be nice. I'm going to be Celtics in 6. I think it could be Celtics in 5. I really do think it could be Celtics in 5, but I'm going to go Celtics in 6 just because the Knicks do have pride. They're going to ball out. I'm sure they will get a couple games, but just from what I saw, and I touched on it in my last video about the Knicks, I just didn't see enough from the Knicks of high elite level basketball. They were playing with their food way too much versus Detroit. Again, should have lost Game 4 if I remember correctly, if that's the one with the Hardaway foul. You should have lost that one. You lost 2 out of 3 games in MSG, so that's not as much of a factor as we're seeing this year as it was last year. And I just don't think it's a great matchup for this New York Knicks team. They haven't beat really any elite teams all year in the playoff, or excuse me, in the regular season. They finally did beat Boston, and they beat them once in overtime. Like, it's just, I'm not really. It's not that I'm trying to discredit the Knicks. I just don't see it. I don't see it for the Knicks. I also think the Knicks, it's just not a good matchup for him. Drew Holiday, I'm putting him on Brunson, and I'm making him guard him like it's like, there's no tomorrow. Like, I think he's going to be giving Brunson a hard time. That's going to be difficult. Obviously, Bridges is probably going to be getting guarded by Tatum or Brown. That's a matchup I'm not in love with. And then either or, you can put one of those two on OG. That's a solid matchup. You got KP on Cat. Cat's not the best defensively. I think KP could work him a little bit. And then when you look at the bench for the Knicks compared to the Celtics, I mean, it's just not as much of a threat in my opinion. You have the sixth man of the year, Peyton Pritchard. You have Derek White. Like, you have other guys. I just think the Celtics are a more they're a deeper team. I like their coach Joe Maz over Tibbs any day of the week. They're a better 3-point shooting team. And I just think they overall have more talent. And overall, I just think it's a difficult matchup for the Knicks. And again, the Knicks have not given me anything to really hang on to. Yes, that they won some of those games against the Pistons in decent fashion, but a lot of them were blown leads. I mean, they almost blew the lead in Game 6 if it wasn't for the Brunson 3. So I just can't be too high on the Knicks heading into this series. I have to show respect to the defending NBA champions, and I'm going to be doing that. So I got the Celtics in 6, but if this goes even 5, I wouldn't be shocked. But yeah, give me the Celtics in 6. I think they go to the ECF to play Cleveland. Now on to my predictions for OKC and Denver. This should be a really interesting series. I'm very excited to see this series because, number one, you have a young team that's really trying to make their mark. They didn't do what they wanted to do last year in the playoffs, but they also weren't fully healthy. And then you get the Denver Nuggets, who were coming off of a head coach firing 2 to 3 weeks ago. I didn't think they were going to be at this point. I thought they were going to be knocked out, but that's not the case. They show that they still have that championship DNA. They win a Game 7 in Denver. I'm very excited to see how this series turns out. And I think some of the biggest matchups we have to really watch out for is can Shai really start scoring, which I think he can. I think Denver probably puts Murray, or they probably put Brown on him, because Brown did a really good job against James Harden. But again, this is Shai. This is in prime Shai, not older James Harden. So we'll see how that goes. I think Jokic is going to be able to eat a little bit in this series, but he's also going to have to deal with some of the stuff down low with Hartenstein and Chet. It's two big bodies, so more than what LA had for sure. The Zubac was a very good center, but again, it's Nikola Jokic. This guy's on another level, and I am curious to see, are they going to throw Lou Dort maybe on Murray? Are they going to throw Lou Dort on some of these guys? I just think when I look at this series, I have OKC in 6, and the reason I have it going 6 is I'm not going to underestimate Denver's championship pedigree, their DNA. I think that's really going to play a factor because I underestimated it last series. But my biggest thing going into this is the amount of rest that OKC has had compared to Denver. Denver just got off playing a 7-game series, flying back and forth. I mean, I guess Colorado isn't too far from LA flight-wise. I'm not sure how far it is, but still, you got to do a little bit of flying here and there. OKC has, been off now for almost a week at this point. Like, it's going to be a long time since they play basketball, and I think that's going to be good for them in this, just because this series is going to be going minimum past 5 games, so they're going to need the health, they're going to need the energy. I think, again, I just think OKC gets it done. I think it's their year. I think Denver they've obviously overexceeded expectations for me personally going into the playoffs now. But I just think OKC, it's their year. I like the depth more than I do for Denver. And I just think the fact that they've been able to rest this long is just going to be a huge factor versus the Nuggets, in my opinion, because we can't underestimate how many of these games really do play a factor on these guys' bodies. So I think OKC gets it done. I think they get it done. Curious to see how does Shai play? I think also just the storylines, the two MVPs, Jokic and Shai. We don't really get a ton of MVP battles in the playoffs, so I'm very much looking forward to that. I think this should be some very high quality basketball. It should be very good basketball. And again, I'm really interested to see, can some of these defenders for OKC, can they shut down Murray? Can they make it hard for Russ? Can they make it hard for Brown? And can Jokic get at their bigs? Can he get at Chet? I'm not really worried about Chet, but Hartenstein plays pretty solid defense. Can he get at Hartenstein? Can Shai get to the rack? Like, there are a lot of just small storylines here that I'm interested in seeing play out. And again, it's an ascending team going against a former NBA champion. So I think there's a lot to consider here. But again, as I've said, I have OKC in 6. I think they get it done, and I think they're advancing to the Western Conference Finals. Now for our last preview of the second round. Warriors are playing the Minnesota Timberwolves. Let's talk about it. In my prediction, I have the Warriors losing in 6 to the Timberwolves. I think the Timberwolves just get it done, and there's a majority of reasons for that. First, let's start with this team just has way more rest than the Warriors. They beat the Lakers in 5. They've been able to rest now for going on almost a week as of me recording this, which is the Sunday of the Game 7 for the Warriors and the Rockets. And they've had more rest. I just think that they would be able to be a little bit more conditioned for this, especially, again, when you look at the Warriors' best 3 players, Steph's in his 30s, Butler's in his 30s, Draymond's in his 30s. These are not young guys. You look at a majority of the guys on the Timberwolves, most of them are in their prime or even under 27 with Ant. So I just think the rest is going to be a huge factor in this series. Also, I like the bodies that they can throw at Steph. Specifically, DiVincenzo, I think he can make it a little tough on Steph. You have Ant. And then when you look at other options as well, you have Randall on Butler. You have Naz Reid on Butler. You have McDaniels you can throw at Butler. You can throw some of those guys at Draymond. You can also go big with Minnesota compared to the Warriors. The Warriors don't really have that much of a big man presence, though obviously Draymond Green has been playing at a defensive player of the year type of season, so I'm not discrediting what he does on that side of the floor. But I just like the fact that they can go a little bigger. We saw, again, what the Timberwolves did to the Lakers without a big man. And again, Draymond Green is a very serious defensive threat. So I am not in any way downplaying his ability here. But I just think Rudy, if he can even give you some competent minutes like he did in Game 5 against the Lakers, he's a bigger presence. He's a bigger presence on the boards. I just think this is something that could play a factor when we look at this series strictly from a matchup standpoint. Now, to give the Warriors some credit, similar to the Denver Nuggets like I've discussed already, they have the championship DNA. They've been in these moments before. They have more experience. But at the same time, I think that stuff translates, but it's not make or break for me going into a series. It really is, again, it depends on the series, but it's something to consider, but I don't know if it's going to be enough to get past the Wolves. For me, the deciding factor is the shot makers for both teams. How I look at it is, and I'm really referencing this Game 6 of the Houston Warriors series, that fourth quarter, nobody could hit a shot. If Steph isn't hitting a shot, if Jimmy's not hitting a shot, if the Warriors role players aren't hitting shots, it's pretty much cooked. It's cooked. When you look at Minnesota, I just think you have a little bit more of a variety when it comes to the shot making. You have Ant, who can go nuclear whenever, but he's minimum giving you 25 points on most games. Minimum. If not a high ceiling of maybe 40, 45. You have, again, DiVincenzo who can make shots, Randall who can make shots. You have McDaniels, you have Naz Reid, Mike Conley if he wants to get busy. I just think there are a little bit more options that you can rely on when you look at Minnesota compared to the Warriors, especially in a 7-game series. I'm not saying the Warriors can't make it difficult for the Timberwolves to make some of these shots as well. Obviously, Ant will be doubled, but I just think, again, these guys are younger than the Warriors. They're younger. And I think that's just going to be a huge factor as the series continues to go on. I mean, we have seen the Warriors have been a little, at times, slow to get really going. I mean, Game 5, that game was wrapped up. They were benching their guys in the third quarter. So I just think that it's going to be the deciding factor in this series. I just think Minnesota has a little bit more scoring options than Golden State. Side note, get ready for the trash talking in this series. I'm so excited. Ant versus Steph, he's going to be chirping him. Butler and Randall, I could see getting into it. Rudy and Draymond, I think those two could be going at it. Like, there is a lot of trash talking potential in this series. I think it's going to be interesting, and I'm just very excited to see because it's kind of similar to the Lakers. It's a older core, going against, with NBA legends, going against that kind of new face on the block, Ant Edwards and the Timberwolves, a little bit more of an underdog team. I'm just super excited to see how this plays out. And yeah, those are my predictions for the second round of the NBA playoffs. So excited for these matchups. This is arguably probably the best round of playoffs we get in the NBA. I mean, there's just so many elite matchups now. Again, on the East side, I'm looking forward to some of these bigger markets, New York and Boston, some of even the Midwest markets, Cleveland versus Indiana. I like that. It's very regional. Very excited for that. And then on the West, you're going to have two MVPs going at it. And then we're going to see, can Ant Edwards, can he step up in his series? So there's so much to consider. There's so much to consider. But again, I'm so excited for these playoffs. They've been very good, and just excited to see where the NBA continues to go this year. And I'm going to be continuing to break it down. So yeah, that's all I got for you guys today. If you enjoy this video, feel free to give it a like. If you have any predictions, drop them down below in the comments. I'd love to see them. And if you like my type of content, feel free to subscribe. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace, guys.